These are the Gede ruins, one of the early settlements found along the East African coast in Kilifi County of Kenya.
We refer to Gede as the lost city. Gede is the only Swahili settlement in the coast of East Africa which is far from the sea.
Here we are in the palace. This residential of the king is built in what today we call a bedsitter system.
It is through archaeology, the study of human history, that one will not only be able to visualize but also appreciate the luxurious lifestyle dwellers experienced here hundreds of years ago.
In the Swahili setup, initially there were no kings, so they were just using their elders. But the Arabs came, they introduced kingdoms, the sultans.
Well, that's why you don't see.
To learn from the Swahili civilization, thousands of visitors, including researchers, step on a number of such ruins to study the social and cultural way of life that reached its peak between the 12th and 15th century.
Had 3 doors, 1, 2, 3.
Mainly urban, such dwellings were part of independent city-states that dotted the East African coastline of the Indian Ocean. Referred to as Kusi and Kaskazi, the southeasterly and northeasterly winds made easy sailing to and from North Africa, Persia, the Arabian Peninsula, India, and as far as China in the Far East. The 3,000-kilometer coastal stretch between Kismayu and Msumbiji in present-day Somalia and Mozambique was inhabited mainly by the Swahili. At the height of the Swahili civilization, there was hardly enough docking space for the huge wooden vessels in such ports along the East African coast.
Na hapa ndio biashara zote zikifanywa, kukija jahazi kutoka Irani, Iraki, Omani, Pakistani, Yemen.
As the dhows left, they were fully loaded with, among others, tons of gold, mangrove poles and timber, wildlife products like elephant tusks, rhino horns, tortoise shells, and animal skins. Aboard the vessels were also grains such as sorghum and millet, and human cargo. The slave trade, which is described as the act of obtaining, transporting, and selling of human beings as business, was practiced in every civilization. It was considered as part of life, and holy scriptures even contain verses that mention slavery.
Right from Exodus.
Yes.
When the Jews are moving from Egypt into Israel,
Yes.
They talk about slaves.
Yes.
The slave amongst these, the slave, how to treat your slaves, the Jubilee, when you're supposed to release them.
In the Quran, slaves are mentioned in at least 29 verses.
And for the needy, and for those employed to collect zakah, and for bringing hearts together for Islam, and for freeing captives or slaves, and for those in debt, and for the cause of Allah, and for the stranded
Kilifi County is one of the counties that has the last known slave market and a port.
Katika Rabai ni jamii ambayo imechanganyika, hasa Warabai na Mijikenda, lakini ndani ya Rabai kuna Warabai ambao ni katika Rabai tunawaita wahenda kuza au wanaitwa wahenda kuza, ambao ni watu ambao walitokana sana na shughuli za kiutumwa.
Au kina Dibora wote kina Kibwana wale ni Wanyasa. Kuna wengine wako Old Town, Old Kiboko. Wakaenda kule. Wakawa fishi majumbani wamezaana kule. Ukiambiwa huyu ni Mnyasa, familia yake huwezi kuamini, utaambiwa ni Mwarabu.
Hapa kwetu biashara utumwa ilikuweko. Ndio unaona kwamba kuko na evidences ya vitu kama vile chuma ambazo zimepachikwa kwa ukuta, visima ambavyo viko ndani ya mashimo haya. Kwa hiyo hizi ni evidence za kuonyesha wazi kwamba hizi sehemu zilikuwa zinatumiwa kama sehemu za kuficha watumwa wale.
As various civilizations across the ocean advanced, so was the demand for labor. This resulted in more men and women being captured, but this time round in large numbers. Those seized were chained and forced to trek for days and in tight rows to ports from where they were purchased in an open market and later shipped overseas.
We have slaves in Lamu, we have slaves in Malindi, we have slaves all the way across the breadth and depth of the coastal strip.
Farming was conducted in the mainland. The Bajuns, the Swahili people, were doing farming in the mainland and then bringing in produce to the islands for sale within and outside the towns, maybe exported to other countries. So in big plantations, casual laborers were hired, and these were taken as slaves who were working in these plantations. For instance, coconut plantations and so many other cash crops.
This documentary is about the Indian Ocean slave trade, which Islam and Muslims stand accused of condoning.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Ironically, although Europeans also practiced the trade for over 300 years, but on the western shores of Africa, what they were engaged in was never associated with their religion.
The British, they participated fully in the slave trade. What happened, the British, after they have found that, it is not beneficiary to them. And so in that particular time, they decided that now maybe time has come where we cannot really take care of all these people.
The history of the East African slavery is not new, did not start with the Arabs.
Slavery is slavery, now or in the past, except that the conditions are different. But it is the same thing, exploitation.
Global merchants perfected this type of exploitation, and in addition to normal merchandise that was transported by the huge wooden vessels, they also established infrastructure to facilitate the movement of human beings en masse. Slave hunters mainly operated in Nyasaland, the Congo, and in the border areas of present-day Mozambique and Tanzania. Long after the Indian Ocean slave trade was abolished, many families are still stigmatized, with some living in denial.
And then I say, it was, I'm thinking now that it's not that significant. I mean,
I know.
Yes.
It's not significant.
But there was a time there.
But they are individuals.
Yes.
What they do
to date. Okay. It's true. They're there. Why do they feel they're better than the others?
We all agree that slave trade or slavery was a wrong institution. And therefore, in adopting to that kind of system, definitely there were miserable things that happened.
What was done, the injustices. It's not about the Arab per se, and it's not only Arabs. The Arabs didn't come from wherever they came from. They didn't know our terrain. They were introduced into the terrain by African middlemen. But they were the beneficiaries, and the West African middlemen made a lot of riches.
Waislamu wanakataa kwamba Uislamu usiingizwe katika jambo la utumwa kwa sababu Uislamu haukuweka utumwa. lakini ni Waislamu ndio wakifanya mambo wakiweka utumwa ama wakipractice ile jambo la utumwa.
In life, we go through a lot of challenges, but that doesn't mean we forget about we cast away the challenges. The challenges are going to be there. They're already written as part of your history. So you cannot choose to say, this part of my history, I delete. No.
I must confess to you that I had a whole chapter, Islam and slavery. I removed that chapter from the book.
Who practice it? I don't want to go deep into that.
So I think it will be incorrect to say that there was no slavery along the coast of East Africa.
Islam was introduced along the East Coast in the 7th century, and the interaction led its adherents to not only influence lifestyle along the shores, but also in the hinterland. Since such ruins thrive due to maritime commerce, it would be interesting to also find out their role in the slave trade.
Most of the tombs which are still standing here, they are for the rich people because they were able, because they are rich enough, they were able to be such tombs in this magnificent shape.
This documentary is about slave trade memory, a series of productions to unravel and highlight the impact of slavery, focusing on the northern part of the East African coast of present-day Kenya.
It's not about condemnation. Nobody's condemning the other one. And when we talk, we become closer. Dialogue brings us closer. Dialogue will bring all these communities closer and bring in the age group so that we don't assume identities, because when we start calling ourselves this, believing that that is associated with the nobility, then it shows that there's some complex in us. We need to break those complexes by talking openly about slavery, which is not a taboo subject anymore. It's a heritage to me.